And today I just want to talk about Crypto.com's new Visa card staking requirement that will come into effect tomorrow on the 18th of January 2021. As you can see, Crypto.com created a blog on the 18th of December 2020 to announce this. So they're given 1 month notice with this new card staking requirement that will be effective tomorrow. So in this workbook, I've summarized the changes. So you can see here, I've just listed down, noted down what the price of CRO was when this was announced. The price of CRO of today, i.e. roughly 8 cents, and the new staking requirement effectiveness, so effective date, which is the 18th of January 2021, i.e. tomorrow. And then here I've listed down the staking requirements. So this is split by card tier. So you have the Midnight Blue, Ruby Steel, Jade Green, Frosted Rose Gold, Orbistan, etc. And these obviously increase in value and cost. In this column here, I have listed the CRO staking requirements. So whenever you stake for a card, it is in CRO terms. So at current, for instance, Ruby Steel is 2,500 CRO, Jade Green is 25,000 CRO, etc., etc. And in the new world, i.e. tomorrow onwards, the staking requirement essentially doubles. So for Ruby Steel, you're going from 2,500 to 5,000, Jade Green 25,000 to 50,000, etc., etc. So essentially, the staking requirement is doubling in CRO terms. Now, looking at this in isolation has no meaning because without knowing the underlying price of CRO and which way that would go in the future, that determines a lot of things. So, for instance, even though today it is 8 cents, tomorrow, if the price of CRO dropped by 50%, then these staking requirements in fiat terms has not changed, only in CRO terms. Of course, CRO could stay the same at 8 cents, or it could increase more than 8 cents. And that would mean that in fiat terms, the card staking cost more than doubles. So bear that in mind which way the CRO price will go. Obviously, that cannot be foreseen. All we can do at the moment is assume an 8 cent assumption for tomorrow. Here I've expressed the staking requirements, but in USD terms, dollar terms. So under current staking requirements, with the assumption that CRO price is at 8 cents, then essentially we have, for instance, Ruby Steel at $200, Jade Green at 2,000, and then 20,000, and then 200,000. In the new view, this has assumed tomorrow, i.e. when these new staking requirements come in, that the price of CRO remains at 8 cents. That's the assumption we have to make. If that is the case, then essentially in fiat terms, in dollar terms, the Ruby Steel goes from $200 to $400 in terms of cost of staking in fiat terms. And Jade Green goes from $2,000 to $4,000, etc., etc. So this is again under the assumption that today the price of CRO is 8 cents, and tomorrow, when the new staking requirement comes in, the price of CRO is 8 cents as well. And by isolating that, we can see the cost doubles in fiat terms. So what that means is, under those assumptions, it would be better to stake for a card today rather than tomorrow. Now, for those that already have a stake for a certain tier, that is grandfathered in. So what that means is, so long as you don't unstake, you won't need to pay the higher CRO staking requirement. Okay, so what I've done in this next box is taken the new staking requirement cost in terms of fiat terms with the assumption of 8 cents per CRO. I put it down here. And I've just wanted to illustrate in terms of demonstrating what mix impact this has. So what I mean by mix impact, and this is example only for illustration purposes. So what I mean is at current, say we have 28% of customers in the midnight blue, 50% in the ruby still, and then 15% in the next one, 5% in the next one, and only 2% in the highest one. So if we assume the new staking requirements at 8 cents per CRO, here we essentially the impact of a price increase in terms of staking requirements in CRO is that we'll see an increase in the proportion in the lower tiers and then a decrease in the proportion of the higher tiers. The reason for this is obviously because the higher tiers become relatively less affordable compared to the lower tiers in fiat terms, which is what we have shown in this simulation up here. So what this means is this distribution changes. So we get a higher proportion in lower tiers and lower proportion in higher tiers. And I just want to entertain that notion and give further thought into that. So what that means is the average interest paid out to CRO in terms of, say, cashback, that weighted average reduces because we're getting a difference in distribution. So this leads into the kind of model or strategy CRO has. And to me, I think in an initial year, or initial few years starting off, there were a lot of promotions, a lot of freebies, generous earn rates in terms of CRO, which was I think at 18% maximum. So it was very volume based strategy. So getting a lot of customers on board and not necessarily making profit initially. And this isn't actually a very uncommon practice because in other industries we see that. For instance, broadband in your first year, you get it so cheap, and then in subsequent years, prices increase, less generous. Also, working in the insurance industry, I know that new business has to be competitive, but the renewal business, the subsequent years, they will look at cleaning the portfolio and targeting profitability, which is essentially lifetime value of customers. So that's kind of analogous to what crypto.com is doing, in my opinion. In the first year, there's been a lot of volume increasing, and also that reduces their fixed cost per customer. And then going forwards, it's more about targeting profitability whilst trying to maintain the volume that has been created. So the volume that has been created is everyone that took out a card in, say, 2020 mainly. And then the profit is going forward, i.e. what we see in the card tier staking requirement increases. So profitability, I think, is an important agenda for crypto.com for 2021. And what does this mean for renewal customers? So people who already have a card, as mentioned, they don't have to stake at the new requirements so long as they don't unstake. So that means that what they're on at the moment relative to the new stake is likely to be good value because they got in earlier than when we've seen this doubling of CRO staking requirements. Obviously, crypto.com will have all the data, so they'll know roughly how much in fiat terms people paid on average for each of the tiers, and they would have put an optimal point to dictate these new staking requirements such that it becomes in the benefit of current customers that already have the stake to remain staked and not unstake and therefore have to pay for the new staking requirements. So this is what we mean by renewal customers. So essentially, In 2020, there's been a lot of volume, a lot of freebies, a lot of people signing up. And then now in 2021, because of this change, they retain these customers by incentivizing them to remain. Because if these customers are enjoying the services, enjoying the earn function, enjoying the cashback functionality, then they will remain on this. There's no incentive to get off it, because if they were to get back on it, they'd have to pay the higher staking fee. So that's what they are doing. They're retaining existing customers, and then with the new customers that are onboarding, they pay higher fiat costs for the card. If we assume if we assume that the price of CRO at least stays at 8 cents. Obviously, if it increases in 2021, new customers will pay even more. And that basically means, in terms of the new customers and the renewal customers, the average cost per customer reduces now in 2021. What this means is, before, we might have got a higher distribution on the higher tiers, and now we've got a lower distribution in the higher tiers, which means the average cost per customer reduces. And how we measure average cost per customer is, the amount of cashback that is being paid out. That cashback percentage um, reduces, because for each of these tiers we have cashback percentages, and as you increase with the tier, as you go up with the tier, your cashback percentage increases. But because your distribution reduces in the higher tiers, that means your average cashback percentage paid out to customers reduces as well. So as we can see, crypto.com, I think, in my opinion, are looking at refining profitability now that they've got the volume which they pumped through in 2020. And this further goes to show, for instance, in terms of the cashback eligibility, they have massively clamped down on what you can get cashback on. And they're essentially reducing leakage to profitability by doing that. So I think in the latter half of 2020, they introduced a list of certain transactions that are not eligible to cashback. So I think they really are, trying to improve on profitability, and try and hit those targets. Even though 2020 was a year that was pretty crazy and generous. Going forward, I don't think we'll see as much generosity. We'll see perhaps fees for certain things. Perhaps withdrawal to exchanges. There could be a fee to that from going from the app to the crypto.com exchange. At the moment, it's free. Maybe in the future they'll put a fee for that.